What a complete joke, Admiral Corzine scoffed, tossing the hologram report onto the black glass table. Humans in their so-called space program, they still use combustion rockets. The rest of the Galactic High Command burst into laughter, some slapping the table, others their own bodies, depending on their species. I sat silently, shifting in my chair. As the newest intelligence officer in the room, I didn't know if I should laugh or stay serious. I chose to stay quiet. Corzine turned toward me, his 4 eyes locking onto mine. "You're unusually quiet, Commander Val. Don't you think these creatures are ridiculous?" I spoke carefully. "I think they're interesting, Admiral. Humans have progressed a lot in a short time." That only made the laughter louder. "Oh please," wheezed General Dorn, a towering Krell whose thick skin shook with each laugh. "What's next? You'll say their nukes can damage our cruisers. They still think nuclear bombs matter," giggled Science Director Prill, her antennae twitching. "And they haven't even figured out gravity manipulation yet. They live stuck to their planet like bacteria in a dish." Admiral Corzine leaned in, his metallic blue skin glowing in the holographic light. "Let me teach you something, Val. Humans are just a curiosity. We've watched them for nearly 200 years. They barely left their solar system. Their computers are ancient. Their science is basic." I nodded, staying quiet, but something about their arrogance felt wrong. "With respect, Admiral," I said slowly, "human technology has been evolving rapidly in recent decades." The room went still. Corzine narrowed his upper eyes and widened the lower ones, a clear sign of annoyance from his species. "Analyst Val," he said coldly, "are you suggesting these primitives are a threat to the Confederation?" "No, sir," I replied quickly, "only that they may be worth monitoring more closely. We have 14 species in this alliance," General Dorn growled, "each one far ahead of Earth. If humans ever became a problem, we'd wipe them out in seconds." "Besides," said Fleet Commander Taz, speaking for the first time, "Earth is rich in resources. If they build anything useful, we'll just take it." He smiled, sharp teeth flashing. The rocker had a history of conquest. That history, it seemed, still lived in his grin. "Let's move on," Corzine snapped, dismissing Earth's image with a wave. "The Vex incursion in Sector 7 is the real threat." But as the meeting dragged on, I couldn't stop thinking about the humans. There was something about them. Maybe it was their stubbornness, their imagination, ... or just how strange they looked. 2 arms, 2 eyes, 1 world ... and somehow they still kept pushing forward. Strange hair patterns, odd features, whatever it was about humans. I couldn't shake the feeling that we were overlooking something important. 3 solar cycles later, I was stationed aboard the Quantum Horizon, a research vessel quietly orbiting Earth far enough to stay hidden from their outdated scanners. My ongoing curiosity about humans had gotten me reassigned. Officially, I was here to study lesser species. In reality, it was a polite punishment for disagreeing with the High Command. "Enjoying the view, Commander?" Captain Jorah asked as she drifted into the observation deck. She moved effortlessly, evolved in low gravity. Her motion always made me a bit jealous. "It's a beautiful planet," I said, staring at the swirling blues and greens below. "Hard to believe such a primitive species came from such an ideal world." "Maybe that's why they're primitive," Jorah replied, her violet eyes reflecting Earth's oceans. "They've never had to truly struggle. The Krell came from a world with triple gravity and toxic air. The Zolari endured an ice age that lasted thousands of years. Adversity drives progress. Humans have faced their share of hardship," I countered. "War, disease, disasters, their history is chaotic." Jorah waved a hand, unconvinced. "Nothing compared to the extinction-level trials we've overcome. They haven't faced a true great filter." I opened my mouth to argue, but then the ship's alarm blared. "Captain Jorah, to the bridge immediately," the ship's AI declared. "Unusual energy signature detected." We rushed to the command deck. The crew was already scrambling, eyes locked to their stations. "Report," Jorah ordered as she slid into her chair. Science Officer Wren looked up, frowning. "We're picking up an energy signal from the far side of Earth's moon. It doesn't match any known human tech." "Show me," she said. A hologram blinked into view. The cratered moon's surface lit up with a pulsing red marker. "Zoom in," I said, leaning forward. The image sharpened, revealing a structure, something clearly built into the rim of a crater. It was partially hidden, but energy readings were undeniable. Power surged through it. "That's impossible," Jorah whispered. "Human records show they abandoned the moon decades ago." "Apparently not," I said, heart racing. "And they've been busy." "Should we report this to High Command?" asked Communications Officer Dex. Jorah hesitated. "Not yet. Let's see what we're dealing with. Prepare a stealth probe." Within minutes, a probe barely the size of a clenched fist launched silently toward the lunar site. It was equipped with our most advanced cloaking tech. No human sensor should have been able to detect Itor, so we believed. Captain Wren's voice was tense. "The probe, it's being scanned by something. They found it." "Minimal physical damage," the engineer reported, his voice rising. "Impossible," Jorah snapped. "That lunar-based tech can't pose." She didn't finish. A concentrated energy beam fired from the moon's surface, instantly vaporizing our probe. full shields, evasive maneuvers, Jorah barked. Too late, a second beam twice as powerful slammed into us. Our shields flared for a moment, then collapsed. All around us, systems began shutting down. What's happening? I asked, watching as holographic screens blinked out one by one. An electromagnetic pulse, Ren said, working frantically at his console, but far more advanced than anything humans should be capable of. Switch to emergency power, Jorah ordered. Backups aren't responding. The engineer called out. Whatever hit us, it disabled the quantum core. We're dead in space. As if to confirm it, the artificial gravity failed. We floated weightless along with tools, data tablets, and drifting cables. Captain Communications Officer Dex called out, strangely calm. We're receiving a transmission from the lunar base. Put it through, Jorah said, struggling to stay composed as she floated awkwardly near the ceiling. A voice filled the ship, clearly human, male, and disturbingly amused. Greetings, visitors. This is General Marcus Flynn of the Earth Defense Alliance. We saw you snooping around our little outpost and thought we'd introduce ourselves properly. Don't worry about your ship. What you're experiencing is temporary. Think of it as a friendly demonstration. The voice paused. We'll be sending a delegation to discuss terms shortly. Welcome to the Sol system. Please keep your appendages inside the vessel at all times. The transmission ended. Silence followed. This can't be happening, Jorah finally whispered. They're supposed to be primitives. They shouldn't have seen us, let alone disabled a Confederation vessel. I grabbed a handrail and pulled myself back toward the floor. Admiral Coulson did say humans were full of surprises. I muttered. Jorah gave me a glare that could have melted steel. Commander Alex, this is hardly the time for jokes. With respect, Captain, jokes may be all we've got left. Before she could respond, the ship suddenly hummed with life. Lights returned, systems flickered on, and gravity snapped back violently. Several crew members hit the floor with painful thuds. Damage report, Jorah ordered, adjusting her uniform. We're stable, said the engineer, groaning as he got up. But the quantum drive is offline. We're stuck in orbit. And there's more, Ren added, eyes wide as he stared at his console. We're detecting multiple launches from Earth's surface. A military response, Jorah asked tensely. No, Ren said. They look like transport ships, 7 of them, heading straight for us. I moved to his station and studied the readings. These aren't primitive combustion rockets, I said slowly. This propulsion signature, I've never seen anything like it. How long until they reach us? Jorah asked. At this speed, 17 minutes, Jorah's expression hardened. Prepare for possible boarding, security teams to all airlocks. Captain, I said carefully, maybe we should consider diplomacy. If they wanted to destroy us, they already would have. Diplomacy, she repeated, her voice tight with disbelief. With primitives who just brought down a Confederation vessel. High Command will never tolerate this kind of humiliation. Jorah scoffed. High Command isn't here, I replied quietly, and we're in no position to fight back. For a long moment, she stared at me conflicted, her pride warring with reality. Finally, she nodded. Very well, Commander. Since you seem to understand these humans so well, you'll lead the diplomatic team. 17 minutes later, I stood at the main airlock with Dex at my side and our cultural expert, Lena, just behind us. Despite Jorah's reluctant agreement to diplomacy, 4 security officers stood nearby, stun weapons discreetly holstered. Remember, I briefed the team. Humans are emotionally reactive, but they can be reasoned with. Stay calm, let me lead. Before I could finish, a loud metallic clang echoed through the corridor. They've docked, Dex announced unnecessarily. The airlock began to cycle. I took a breath, standing tall, trying to project a calm I didn't feel. The doors opened. 5 humans stood before us. They wore sleek, dark uniforms that didn't reflect light. They absorbed it. The man in front smiled. He was tall for a human, with close-cropped gray hair and sharp blue eyes that reminded me, unsettlingly, of Admiral Coulson. Commander Val, I presume, he said in perfect galactic standard. My mandibles clicked involuntarily. How do you know my name? I asked. And how are you speaking our language? His smile widened. We've been monitoring your communications for a while now, he said. You'd be surprised what humans can accomplish when they're properly motivated. May we come aboard? We have much to discuss. I glanced back at my team. Their expressions mirrored mine, shocked on. Then I turned back to Flynn. Of course, General, welcome aboard the Quantum Horizon. As they stepped inside, I couldn't shake a single thought. The High Command's laughter had been premature, very premature. And somewhere in the back of my mind, I heard Admiral Coulson's voice. These humans and their so-called space program. Can you believe they still use combustion rockets? Apparently they didn't. And that was only the beginning of what the Confederation had gotten wrong. General Flynn moved through our corridors like he owned the place, confident and fully in control. His team followed closely, scanning everything they saw with quiet precision. Quantum propulsion, gravitational control, neural interface systems. Flynn noted, gesturing to our textures. We approached the conference room. Impressive. Though not quite as advanced as we expected. I almost stumbled. Not as advanced, I echoed. stunned. With respect, General, your species was launching chemical rockets less than a century ago. Flynn chuckled. The sound echoed eerily down the hall. Ah yes, our public space program. Very entertaining, wasn't it? He turned to me, eyes sharp. Tell me, Commander, if you wanted to hide your true capabilities from a galaxy full of potential threats, wouldn't you do the same? A convincing facade would be the logical choice, I said slowly, my mind racing. You're saying Earth's visible technology is deliberately outdated? Not all of it, Flynn replied as we stepped into the conference room. Just the parts we didn't mind you seeing. Captain Jorah was already waiting for us. She had composed herself well, despite the situation. General Flynn, she said with a formal nod. I am Captain Jorah of the Confederation research vessel Quantum Horizon. Flynn bowed in return. Thank you for your hospitality, and apologies for the rather aggressive introduction. You disabled my ship, Jorah replied flatly. Flynn didn't flinch. You were spying on our planet, he said, still smiling. Fair's fair. One of his officers, a sharp-featured woman with dark skin, stepped forward and placed a small device on the table. It hummed to life, projecting a hologram that rivaled our own most advanced displays. I'm Colonel Anna Petrov, Earth Defense Alliance Intelligence, she said. Let's skip the small talk. She glanced at each of us before continuing. We know you're part of the Galactic Confederation. 14 species, 73 star systems. We know you've been watching Earth for roughly 200 years. And we know that until about 6 hours ago you considered us harmless, primitive, barely worth your attention, except maybe for our natural resources. The room fell silent. Even Jorah didn't have a response. How? I finally asked, struggling to keep my voice steady. How do you know all of this? Flynn and Petrov exchanged a knowing look. Should we tell them? Flynn asked, clearly amused. They'll find out soon enough, Petrov replied with a shrug. Flynn turned back to us. In the year 2031, 64 years ago by our calendar, one of your scout ships crashed in a remote part of Earth, what you'd call the Australian outback. That's impossible, Jorah said sharply. Any crash would have been reported and neutralized. The Confederation doesn't leave evidence behind. Well, someone did, Flynn said, grinning. Your recovery team missed a few things. We salvaged fragments of quantum circuitry, parts of a navigational core, Petrov continued, her voice calm but firm, and most importantly, a damaged but functional communications array. My stomach dropped. Choice, act like we found nothing. Let the public space program continue as normal. Let the Confederatio once we figured out how to access your networks, she went on. Earth's governments made AN keep watching, thinking we were clueless. All the while, Flynn added, we were studying you, listening to your fleet chatter, reverse engineering everything we could. 60 years of preparation. While you watched us launch our cute little rockets. He took a step closer, his expression hardening. You saw what we wanted you to see. My mind reeled. All this time you've been preparing for something. For the inevitable, Flynn said. Invasion, I asked quietly. Exploitation. Some form of forced enlightenment. Flynn raised his hands and wiggled his fingers in mocking air quotes. Pick your euphemism, Commander. History shows us one thing: advanced civilizations never leave the weak alone forever, especially when resources are involved. I wanted to argue to defend the Confederation's ideals, but the image of Fleet Commander Taz's sharp grin and his casual talk of appropriating Earth's assets silenced me. You mentioned the Earth Defense Alliance, Jorah said, smoothly steering the conversation away. I was under the impression that Earth remained politically fragmented. Another useful facade, Petrov replied. Yes, publicly, we maintain our nations, and we even stage occasional conflicts. It helps sell the image of being disorganized and primitive. In truth, the Alliance operates in deep shadow, with representatives from every major power. Flynn gestured toward his team, diverse in age, appearance, and origin. We don't always agree, he said. But the looming threat of alien contact, that has a way of making old rivalries seem petty. And the lunar base, I asked. Just one of many, Flynn said proudly. We have installations across the Sol system, Mars, Europa, Titan, the asteroid belt, all hidden, all active, shielded from your senses, until we choose otherwise. Jorah leaned forward, eyes narrowing. What exactly do you want from us, General? Nothing complicated, Flynn answered. Recognition, respect, and formal diplomatic relations with the Confederation as equals, not as a species to be monitored or exploited. Jorah shook her head. The High Command will never agree. Not without solid proof of your capabilities. Flynn's smile sharpened. Oh, we're more than ready to provide proof. In fact, we already have. He nodded toward one of his officers who activated a small device. A hologram sprang up above the table, displaying the space around Earth. Our ship was clearly shown along with the moon, and then 7 more Confederation vessels appeared, ships that had been completely invisible to our own senses. Jorah stood up, stunned. What is this? These are the ships sent to find you, Flynn explained. Scout vessels, mostly. 2 light cruisers, all currently disabled and can just like yours. That's an act of war, Jorah whispered, her violet eyes wide with disbelief. No, Flynn replied firmly. That's a demonstration. If we wanted war, Captain, Your ships would be gone, not temporarily inconvenienced. Petrov stepped forward again. We've been monitoring your communications for decades. We know how the High Command thinks. They respect strength. They dismiss weakness. We're simply speaking their language. I took a breath. And what happens now? Now, Flynn said, his expression softening just slightly. Now, we negotiate as equals. The next 26 hours were the most intense of my career. Captain Jora, recognizing how delicate our situation had become, formally appointed me lead negotiator, partly because of my knowledge of humans, and partly, I suspected, so she'd have someone else to blame if things went wrong. General Flynn proved to be a skilled diplomat. He was assertive but not unreasonable. And Colonel Petrov was even more impressive. Her knowledge of Confederation politics, procedures, and diplomatic loopholes was so precise. I began to wonder just how deeply their network had infiltrated ours. By the time Admiral Corzin arrived with a full diplomatic delegation and, not coincidentally, 3 heavily armed battlecruisers waiting just outside. The system at Flynn's request, the preliminary agreement had already been drafted. The meeting took place on Luna, inside the very base that had first exposed humanity's secret. Admiral Corzin hadn't stopped twitching his mandibles since stepping inside, clearly stunned by the scope of what he was seeing, and by how completely the Confederation had misjudged humanity. "This is beyond anything we've seen," Admiral Corzin muttered, as we walked through the wide corridors of Luna Base. Lined with technology that felt both strangely familiar and undeniably alien. "The High Command is in chaos," I told him. "Even the Presider herself has taken a personal interest." "Maybe that's for the best," I suggested carefully. "A new perspective might help." Corzin stopped, turning all 4 of his eyes on me. His tone was low and sharp. "You don't understand, Valix. The humans have been inside our most secure networks for decades. Do you realize how many secrets they might have uncovered? Military, political, even strategic contingencies. The Krell are demanding immediate retaliation," he added bitterly. "That would be a mistake," I said, choosing my words with care. "You haven't seen what I've seen, Admiral. Their defenses aren't just impressive, they're something else entirely. So everyone keeps telling me," Corzin grumbled. "Let's get this over with." The conference chamber was vast. The ceiling a transparent dome offering a breathtaking view of Earth glowing in the black sky like a quiet threat. The human delegation was already present. Standing in formation as we entered, Admiral Corzin, Flynn greeted warmly, stepping forward and offering a hand in the human custom. "Welcome to Luna Base Alpha." Corzin hesitated, then slowly extended his own hand. "General Flynn, the Confederation is willing to hear your proposal." "Excellent," Flynn smiled. "Let's begin." What followed was 7 long hours of negotiations. There was shouting mostly from the Krell representative and plenty of tension. But by the end of it, we had the outline of something historic. A formal treaty between the Galactic Confederation and a single planet species. The terms were surprisingly simple. Earth would be recognized as a sovereign system, granted the same rights and protections as any Confederation member. In return, humanity would share some of the technologies they had secretly developed over the past 6 decades, advancements that, to our shock, went beyond what we thought possible. They hadn't just copied our tech, they had improved it. Most surprisingly of all, Earth would not join the Confederation. Instead, it would remain an independent alien. Unusual concession. Clearly difficult for Admiral Corzin to accept, but the human leader, President Lyra, made it non-negotiable when she arrived midway through the talks. "We've spent too long hiding in plain sight to give up our independence now," she said, her aging face set with unshakable resolve. "Friendship, yes. Trade, certainly. Mutual defense, when necessary. But Earth governs Earth." By the end of the conference, even the Krell, however, reluctantly acknowledged Earth's right to self-determination. This shift in tone may have been helped by a brief demonstration. Earth's planetary defense grid disabling. The Krell battlecruiser's weapons array in seconds. Without effort, without warning, as the final signatures were inked and the delegation began to mingle in that awkward way diplomats often do after major power shifts, I found myself standing beside General Flynn. "You know," I said, watching the room, "when I first suggested to the High Command that humans might be worth a closer look, this was not the outcome I had in mind." Flynn laughed, calm and amused. "Life's full of surprises, Commander." He wasn't wrong. "It is interesting," I admitted, "but I have to ask, why keep the act going for so long? You could have revealed yourselves years ago." Flynn's smile faded. His voice lowered. "Your species, your intentions." He glanced at me. "Not all of you were dismissive, Commander, but enough were, and that was a problem." "And now?" I asked. "Now," Flynn said, straightening, "we step forward as we truly aren't, as the primitives you once mocked, and not as invaders or victims either. We come as equals with a perspective no one else can offer." Then he smiled again. "I think this next century we needed time. Time to develop our defenses, perfect our technologies, and quietly expand throughout the solar system. More importantly, we needed to understand the Confederation your politics is going to be." Very interesting. 1 solar cycle later, I stood on Earth once again, this time as the Confederation's first official ambassador to humanity. The promotion surprised me. Corzin had apparently been impressed with how I handled first contact, though he'd never admitted out loud. From my embassy in New Geneva, a neutral zone surrounded by glass towers and green technology, I watched something incredible unfold. Human culture, quirky, chaotic, and brilliant, began to spread across the Confederation like wildfire. Their entertainment was a hit among younger generations. Human architecture began reshaping skylines on distant worlds, and their strange combination of optimism and paranoia seeped into political thinking in ways no one expected. Trade boomed. Cultural exchanges became common, and slowly, the initial outrage within the High Command gave way to reluctant admiration. "You know what the humans say," General Dorn grunted beside me during a diplomatic reception, his massive body crammed awkwardly into what humans called a tuxedo. "Necessity is the mother of invention, and paranoia is its father," added Science Director Prill, now a devoted student of human tech. "Can you imagine what they might have achieved if they hadn't spent 60 years deceiving us?" "Honestly," I replied, "they might not have been so interested in peace." As the room buzzed with conversation, humans and aliens mingling, arguing, laughing, making alliances, my comm device chimed. A message from Fleet Commander Taz, who had undergone a dramatic change in opinion since witnessing humanity's capabilities firsthand. "Preliminary report from the joint mission to the Andromeda satellite galaxy. Human quantum tunneling tech allowed us to arrive weeks ahead of schedule. The native species are complex. More details to follow. However, the human team's unconventional methods may have prevented a diplomatic incident. High Command is pleased." I smiled, imagining Admiral Corzin's face as he read the same update. The humans had a saying, "eating crow." Apparently it wasn't very tasty. Looking out across the reception, I watched as alliances were forged, not out of tradition but out of shared experiences, out of survival, out of respect, and I felt honored. I had witnessed the birth of something unprecedented. Not the forced assimilation of a young species, but a real partnership. The Galactic High Command had once laughed at Earth, called them backward, primitive, unworthy of attention. But now, the laughter had stopped, and in that silence, something new was rising. A future shaped not by power or fear but by humanity's chaotic brilliance, their resilience, their unwillingness to follow the rules, and just maybe, that was exactly what the galaxy needed.